First Torah portion being Behar, and the second Torah portion being Bechukotai. So before we get into every detail, because there is a lot going on over here, there is a very, as an introduction, I'd like to make note, a worthy note. I think in previous years I've made such a note, but we have newcomers, and I'm sure everyone will enjoy these. We understand that God is involved in every aspect of our lives, whether we understand it or see him or not. However, if we look through our Torah, there are 3 commandments that God himself forces himself, so to say, to take part of, to participate in an obvious, in an open manner. So, for example, if a person keeps the Sabbath, it's not that automatically they're going to be blessed with health, wealth. Well, they may have some emotional health, that a person gains from the fact they're able to stop once a week and recharge. But physically speaking, something which is blatant and obvious from almost all of our mitzvot, someone observes them, it doesn't mean that God openly participates in a manner that's visible to all. There are 3 mitzvahs, however, that we do see Hashem right away, and it's because God himself promises it. Hashem promises that any Jew who leaves their field behind, leaves their home behind, during the 3 times a year of pilgrimage, in Hebrew we call it Aliyah Laregel, they'll come home and they'll see everything the way it was left. No robbers, no foreign armies. It's all going to be left there. Hashem promises, if you go and you come back, it'll be there. So that's obvious that Hashem has to be involved in an open manner, because if Hashem promises that, and then someone goes and comes back and everything's vandalized or stolen or taken over, then how do you answer that? So that's number 1. The second is the unfortunate event of a sota. I'm not going to go too deep into it now. It's not tonight's topic. But in the event that there is a wife who is unfaithful to her husband and she is denying it, and then she was warned, and then she was warned again with witnesses, and then she was caught with the individual that she was warned against alone in a place with witnesses. And then obviously it escalates to a point where her husband and her have to be brought to the temple, and then she is given a special potion of water and earth and the erasings of the Parshat Sotah, of the portion of the way, the unfaithful wife. The Torah says that if she drinks this concoction and she is truly unfaithful, that she will pass. Again, like on the spot. Again, another time the Torah tells us that God has to be openly involved in that commandment. So those are 2. The third is in this week's Torah portion. So again, those are a little off topic. This week's Torah portion, Hashem says that if you work those 6 years, the land, and the 7th year, the year of Shemitah, the year where we give the land a sabbatical, if you observe the Torah and you don't work it, don't worry. That 6th year, you're going to have a triple blessing. How does the Torah explain the triple blessing? Well, you're going to have the 6th year taken care of, obviously, because you're working it. You're going to have the 7th year also taken care of, even though you're not working it. And the 8th year, the first year of the next cycle, where you may not have had any time, like you take a whole year off of land. When you get back to working it, it doesn't just sprout right away. Hashem says that don't worry. If you observe this Shemitah, Hashem will guarantee that you will have what to eat and what to survive on for all those 3 years, based on just the 6th year of you working. So these are 3 commandments where Hashem has to participate in an absolute open manner. So again, we have to just understand this. The Torah is now giving us giving the Jewish people a commandment, which isn't going to be taking place right now. It's going to be taking place for when they enter the land of Israel. And the Torah, again, we're going to see the verses in a moment. The Torah is saying that when you, after finally you conquer and you split up and you settle in the land of Israel, after all that, you're going to start working the land for 6 years, but on the 7th year, you have to completely step back from the land. There's no plowing, no planting, no watering, no cutting, no trimming, no pruning, no picking or gathering to sell anything. It's just from plant to mouth, from plant to plate. That's it. And furthermore, you can't be greedy and just close up your gates and lock it and say, I'm going to keep everything for next year. On the contrary, you have to open it and allow anyone to come, whether they're rich or poor. Everyone's allowed to come to eat from your field. This is the word shemitah, which means shamot, stop, and you let the land rejuvenate itself. So this is what's going on in the beginning of this week's Torah portion. And I want to take a look with you, with your permission, at the beginning, at the first verse. So, chapter 25 in Leviticus, verse 1, it says, Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe Behar Sinai lemor. So now God is coming and he's telling Moses to tell the Jewish people the law of Shemitah. But something very interesting is he is telling it to him at Har Sinai. Really? Is this the only Torah commandment that Moses received from Mount Sinai? Weren't they all given to us at Mount Sinai? Well, this is a famous question. Rashi, amongst others, asked this question. What's the connection? It's a very famous Hebrew line. What's the connection between Har Sinai, Mount Sinai, and this mitzvah of Shemitah? What does one have to do with another? Again, the obvious question is, every single mitzvah was given to Moses at Mount Sinai. So why is this one any different? So Rashi explains, you're right. It's just an example. The mitzvah of Shemitah is just an example, and it's chosen just to show you that all the laws were taken from Mount Sinai, not meaning we were given to Moses at Mount Sinai, not only the 10 Commandments, and all of their details were also given at Mount Sinai to Moses to give to the Jewish people, including something so far-flung as the mitzvah of Shemitah. Okay? That's what Rashi says. It's just to show you that every aspect of our Torah was given to Moses at Mount Sinai in their great detail. So the Zera Shimshon says, thank you, Rashi. But why this mitzvah over any other? We have 603 mitzvot to choose from, right? Because 10 were said at Mount Sinai in the 10 Commandments. So we have another 603 mitzvot to choose from to be the example mitzvah to tell us that everything's included in Mount Sinai. So why out of 603 was Shemitah the one that was chosen, asks the Zera Shimshon. I think it's a fair mitzvah. So a fair question. On top of it, this mitzvah, as we explained previously, is a mitzvah that's going to be observed not now in the desert, in 40 years from now when they enter the land of Israel and after they conquer it. So why would this be the example mitzvah that we are being told about right now that God is making an example out of all other 603 mitzvot? I think it's a very, very fair question. Okay. The Zera Shimshon answers as follows. The Midrash tells us that this mitzvah was chosen because it has specific parallels between Mount Sinai to the mitzvah of Shemitah. There are certain commonalities. So, for example, number one, a person who observes the mitzvah of not working the land on the 7th year, the mitzvah of Shemitah, is by observing it, they actually save the Jewish people from exile. As we know, it makes perfect sense. A person who keeps the Torah in the land of Israel, a person who observes and works the land according to the way God intended for it to be while giving it to us, is a great merit in order to keep the land. And if you cannot treat properly what you have, that's when, God forbid, Hashem takes it away. So, when a person keeps the mitzvah of Shemitah and doesn't work it on the 7th year, what they're doing is they're saving the Jewish people from exile. Mount Sinai, when the Jewish people stood at Har Sinai, gave the Jewish people the opportunity to be free. It gave them the gift of freedom. It gave them independence over the other nations. So we see a parallel that independence, freedom, and the contrary to exile is something that is attained both through Mount Sinai as well as the mitzvah of Shemitah. That's one parallel. Another parallel he gives is that Shemitah gives, as we explained, a triple blessing. The 6th year, the 7th, and the 8th year until finally things could start growing back. Har Sinai also blessed the Jewish people with great, great blessings. They were blessed with not only the Torah, they were blessed with unity, they were blessed with being exposed and to God in a revealed way that is like no other. So the Zera Shimshon says these are just two of multiple examples of a parallel that we find between Mount Sinai and keeping the mitzvah of Shemitah, and therefore Shemitah was chosen because it's something similar that the both hold, unlike other mitzvot. So again, we're going to see another part, but just on this aspect, we see the amount of blessing that a person is given when they are faithful to Hashem, when they have strong trust and belief in Hashem, just like we see with the mitzvah of Shemitah. Now, if we look at the next two verses, the Zera Shimshon asks a powerful question. Take a look. Okay, so we're in chapter 25, verse 2. The pasuk says as follows: Daber el bnei Yisrael v'amarta elahem. Tell the Jewish people, Ki tavo el ha'aretz asher ani noten lachem. When you're going to come into the land that I will give you, obviously the land of Israel, v'shavta ha'aretz Shabbat lashem. And then you shall rest a Sabbath to the Lord. Basically, you let the land rest after the 6 years of working it. Next verse, Shesh shanim tizra sadecha, 6 years you shall sow your field, v'shesh shanim tizmor karmecha, in 6 years you shall prune your vineyard, v'asafta tivuata, and you will gather its produce. Look how beautiful of an observation the Zera Shimshon makes. He says in this verse, it's speaking in plural. It says ki tavo'u in a plural way. The next verse, which is an obvious continuation, it says shesh shanim tizra sadecha in a singular form. It should have said shesh shanim tizre'u. Why does it say tizra singular? Or it should have said ki tavo el haaretz. Why tavo'u? So the Torah is obviously very exact in every word, letter, and obviously tense and grammar. Why is it that in this verse, verse 2, it's in plural, while in verse 3 it is in singular? Very, very powerful question that the Zera Shimshon asks, and he gives, as always, a powerful answer. I forgot one more question. It seems like it's a mitzvah, says the Zera Shimshon, to actually plant for 6 years. It says shesh shanim tizra sadecha. That means we have an obligation to plant and work the land. Is that true or not? So question number 1 is plural to singular. Question number 2 is, seems like verse 3, it's an absolute obligation to plant and to work the land. Is that so? So Zera Shimshon goes on to explain that in the future, the Jewish people, future meaning Mashiach, the Jewish people will not need to work at all. All will be done for them and taken care of, just as it was for Adam HaRishon, for Adam before he ate from the tree of knowledge. Everything was ready for him and available for him. It was going to be the same way for the Jewish people in the time of Mashiach. So when the Jewish people act like they're supposed to act, they won't need to work hard. Their work will be done for them. So it's a foreign concept to many. But this is only, says the Zera Shimshon, only for Jews who are at that high level. That's why it's foreign to many of us. So to answer the second question, is it an obligation to plant? It seems so from from verse 3. Answer is yes, it is. But it's only an obligation to plant for those who need to care for themselves and need to work the land, who need to provide for their own parnasah. But for those who are at a very high righteous level that it's taken care of them by others as messengers from Hashem, so then they don't. That's why it's singular. But the reason why the first is in plural, because everyone's going to come to the land of Israel. Everyone's going to have to rest the 7th year. No matter if you were righteous or not righteous, whether you had to work the land or not work the land, everyone rests that 7th year. It's a sabbatical for all. Individuals need to plant 6 years, but collectively, everyone needs to rest on that 7th year, whether you're at the level of having to work for yourself or at a higher level that it's being done for you by others. So with this, this is what the Zera Shimshon says. I think it's short to the point, and it's beautiful. The lesson that I wanted to share with everyone on this is something the Talmud in Masechet Brachot, page 35 says. The Talmud says that there's a dispute between Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and Rabbi Ishmael. There's a dispute between the two of them of if Torah has to be all or nothing. Basically, if you're either meaning you're completely dedicated to Torah, or you're completely dedicated to working, or if there needs to be a balance between the two. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the more radical opinion, he says you choose one or the other. It's either your whole life is dedicated to Torah, or your whole life is dedicated to work. Rabbi Ishmael says no. And he brings proofs, and he says we need to make sure it stays as a balance between the two. And the Talmud concludes and says that many tried like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and they were not successful. They were one or the other. Those who tried like Rabbi Ishmael succeeded. The conclusion the Talmud says is that as Jews, we have an obligation to strike a balance between furthering our Jewish and spiritual connection, as well as our financial and bodily needs that have to be tended to. We live in a physical world after all. We need to, however, strike a balance and make sure that we're providing for both of those worlds, or both of those needs, the spiritual as well as the physical. And very often it's a very hard balance to strike. Some have the temptation, obviously the more observant or the more committed, of just spending time learning and teaching. But most people have the opposite problem. Most people have the issue of only focusing and spending their time on providing and making and creating and doing, but unfortunately forgetting their basic necessity and needs of clinging to the Creator, learning Torah, and observing what is being learned. So that's the first idea. The first idea is make sure that our emunah and bitachon, our belief and trust in God, is in check, and that we are providing for both aspects, not only the physical aspects of our life and the materialistic ones, but also the spiritual ones. Second point I wanted to mention on this is that we have to understand as Jews that all our efforts really is the only thing we can do to try. We can just try by putting our best foot forward and putting our effort into it. But we have to remember that it is Hashem himself who provides the success. We try, we do, but at the end of the day, is the plant going to grow? Is it going to give fruit and vegetables? Is the investment going to be good? Is our time going to be properly spent on whatever it is that we're doing? That's all up to God. The success is up to God. We need to make our efforts, but the success is always up to God, and hopefully always for the best.